Have you ever just taken a moment to just look at yourself in the mirror? Like, I'm saying full blown staring yourself in the eyes, just trying to figure out who the hell you even are at this point. Well, if you were anything like me, then you probably came to the realization that you had absolutely zero fucking idea. And let me be the first to tell you, that shit feels absolutely soul crushing. Like, to be honest with you, I've been seeing this sort of thing more and more recently with generations of people who just walk this earth without ever truly figuring out who they want to be or what they even are in this life to begin with. And I feel like it's a straight up crisis that we don't even talk about enough, an identity crisis to be exact. Like, I'm sure we've all had our moments where suddenly we get that desire to run away from everything, or that desire to cut yourself off from society as a whole completely, or just that desire to just smoke meth and fistfight crackheads over copper wire in the local junkyard. Alright, that one might just be me, but whatever, my point still stands. At the end of the day, we actually just want to feel alive for once, and we actually want to feel something more than just boredom and depression that already fills our everyday lives. And I feel like it's our brain's way of telling us that something is seriously fucking wrong. More specifically, I feel like it's our brain telling us to get the fuck up and figure out who you were meant to be because maybe then we can actually have a purpose in our life. At least that's how it was for me. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and tell you how I not only found myself, but also a reason to actually keep on going in this life and how you can get to that point too. Alrighty, so as per usual, I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys some of my background on this topic. That way you can perhaps understand that I'm not just some loser who has no experience with this topic. Instead, what you're going to realize is that I'm just a yappy loser who spent most of their lives trying to come to terms with the fact that he had zero fucking idea what life even was about to begin with. So without further ado, who is this loser? Well, to get started, I'm just a guy in his early 20s who spent most of his life juggling between being perpetually depressed and severely anxious. Throughout my teen years, I grew up in an environment where I had to essentially hide away from absolutely everyone. And as you can imagine, this led to me being socially inept recluse who would only mutter at most a few words every day. Now, where did that lead me? As a result of the depression and inability to even really put myself out there, I went ahead and spent the vast majority of my life not knowing who the fuck I was because all I ever knew at that point was just my anxiety. I didn't know what I legitimately felt passionate about, I didn't know what it was like to have close connections with friends, and I didn't know what it was like to live a carefree life without anxiety and self-hate. Like, what was the point of even living life when all I knew of this life was just numbness and fear? I found myself asking myself that question all the fucking time, and I was always so confused to see how people could genuinely enjoy living life when the only reality I ever knew was doing anything but. My life basically devolved into hoping a bus hit me on the way over to school or work because maybe then the pain would go away. The ideation of that prospect was always on the forefront of my mind, and everything just felt fucked up beyond belief, and I had zero fucking idea on how to even remotely begin to unfuck my fucked life and find that meaning I craved. Like, at the end of the day, I just wanted it all to stop, and I wanted to be something more than just my anxieties. I wanted to at least be something to begin with since I was nothing. Just passionless, emotionless, and just straight up lifeless. So, where was that turning point that led me to where I am now? Truth be told, I don't think it was necessarily a single event, but instead many small ones spread out across a timeline. However, I think the single event that made me realize that I needed to change in my life was when I was closest to ending it. I talked about it in one of my first videos, but to get down to the gist of it, at the height of my depression, I had a huge issue with self-harm. I recently was getting over a harsh dating experience with a girl that sent me down an incredibly depressive spiral. I remember that day pretty clearly, and it was when I was like carving lines into my arms with a dull razor blade, listening to Ball Tongue from Korn. Great band, by the way. But I realized that the self-harm at that point wasn't even about her. It was about the fact that it actually made me feel something for once. I realized I was willing to destroy myself in order to seek out something more than the numbness that filled me. And it just made me feel so fucking small and stupid. Like, I basically had barcodes on my shoulders that are only now finally starting to fade away years later, and all for what? To feel temporary adrenaline? Like, I realized something needed to change, and if it was feelings that I coveted, then there had to be something out there that could actually give it to me without subjecting myself to more and more razor blade scars. And that's where my journey began, which leads me to my first point. Discovering your passions. Over the next few months following that event, I decided to try a bunch of different things, ranging from drawing bullshit art with a paper and pencil to getting choked out in jujitsu. At the time, I wasn't sure what it was that I wanted to do, but I knew what kind of person I would like to try to be. Someone who was well-rounded as a whole and was good at everything. I hate to break it to you, I've yet gotten to that point where I am good at everything. However, let me tell you, I do think my art is rad as fuck now, and I love wrestling and getting choked out by sweaty men in karate costumes and jujitsu. So, I honestly think I was at least semi-successful when it came to finding a passion of some sorts. But jokes aside, with getting into jujitsu for instance, at first I was kind of scared to be honest. I was never really a fighter at all, and here I was now basically being forced to essentially grapple and fight people one on one. It definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone to say the least, but anyways, with that first sparring session, I really was just able to learn a lot about myself in that moment. Like, in between having my arms bending in directions they really shouldn't be bending, and suddenly wondering why everything was going dark as my instructor was choking the fuck out of me, I realized I actually felt kind of alive for once. With that first sparring session, I tapped out nearly 9 times without it, or within a 5 minute period, which was kind of embarrassing. I know, but let me tell you, black belts don't mess around. But after basically getting mopped across the floor, I knew right then and there that I wanted to be the guy who could tap out absolutely anyone, no matter how big and strong they were. I wanted to be able to effortlessly win grappling matches, and I wanted to improve first and foremost. And so after that first session, I finally had something to work towards. I felt motivated for once, and I had something to look forward to at the end of the day. I don't know if I can say jujitsu saved my life, but I can definitively say that I would be infinitely worse without it. What jujitsu did was it allowed me to discover a repressed passion that I had. It made me realize that I could be something, and that I didn't have to be a shell of a human who just sat around doing nothing all day. And it was at that point where I started to get hooked onto it. So, after discovering one of my first passions, I then made it a goal to find many others, which led me to art, guitar, weightlifting, and even fucking collecting houseplants. I don't care if that makes me sound like a middle aged woman, me and my Monstera plant are gonna fuck you up if you keep talking smack. But the point is, after discovering all these things, it really added more depth to me. I now had shit that I knew I liked. I had hobbies, and most importantly, I had at least a little more purpose in my life. Was I still low key depressed? Yeah, but did it give me an amazing distraction and avenue to actually allocate all my negative feelings into? Fuck yeah, it did. And even if I was still depressed, I could definitively say that my depression had grown to be much more manageable and was even resolving itself somewhat. So, to reiterate, here's what I want you to do. As tough as it may be, especially when you feel as if everything is pointless, I want you to go ahead and try a fuck ton of different hobbies. It doesn't matter what they are, as long as it's something that takes at least a little bit of skill. Not just sitting there scrolling on TikTok or whatever. What this will do is maybe allow you to kind of surprise yourself with what you can learn. And that's where you can begin to find out who you are. One hobby at a time, you'll slowly start building those layers that reveal you for who you are. So straight up fucking do it. Alrighty, so with that out of the way, what's a second way we can begin by developing our identity? The answer is smoking meth. Just kidding, it's therapy. I know it may be pretty obvious, but despite how much it may seem to be the obvious answer, it's honestly something that people fail to take advantage of. One of the most common things I hear from people who are depressed is that one of the leading causes of their depression is their lack of self identity. And it's crazy because the more and more you look at different mental conditions, you realize it's a common theme amongst most of them. Anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, yada yada yada. The point is, the lack of self identity may be a symptom of one of those conditions. When I went to therapy for the first time, that was something that was made incredibly apparent to me. What therapy ended up doing for me was helping me through the process of figuring out the feelings I repressed for so fucking long. Therapists, including mine, always did a great job at observing facts about myself that I didn't seem to notice. My therapist helped break down my issues with my self esteem, anxiety, and depression and made it so much easier to actually understand why I did the things I did, and ultimately, they helped point me into the right direction. Also, by actually talking about my feelings, or at times, my lack thereof, I was able to put that shit out there instead of bottling everything up. I had a healthy outlet to release the emotions that destroyed me over the years, which allowed me to actually begin healing. So, what I want you to do is do the same if possible. I know it may not always be easy, especially if insurance is an issue, but if you are in a position where you can get a therapist, then straight up fucking get one. If you definitely can't get one, then here's what I suggest doing instead. What helped me out a bunch was also just meditation and journaling religiously, and I know it's not quite the same as having a therapist, but it does have its merits. So consider trying it out. The main goal at the end of the day is just giving yourself an outlet and a place to be introspective, so just do it. Alrighty, so the last point I want to talk about here before I wrap up the video is probably one of the most important. Stop doing shit solely because other people want you to, and do what you legitimately want to do. I see this sort of thing all the fucking time, especially with those in my life that I'm incredibly close to. For example, for the longest time, my partner would opt out of trying shit she thought was cool solely because she was worried about what people would think of her. Whether it was wearing the colors and clothes she loved, trying out different hobbies, or just speaking her mind at the end of the day. I struggled with the same exact fucking thing for a while, and to say that it was isolating wouldn't be enough in the slightest. What I want you to realize is that by living a life where you focus on what others expect of you, you never truly get to live a life for yourself because it's never been about you at that point. When you're at that point, how will you ever figure out who you're meant to be? The answer is you never will, because guess what? You're removing that prospect straight from your own hands. You'll never know how much you enjoyed crocheting or yoga because you never tried it. You'll never know what it means to feel fulfilled in your hobbies and belief, and you'll never know who you are at the end of the day. So it's time we knock that shit off. Sure, maybe your parents want you to be a doctor, but what do you want to do? I can tell you straight up that you probably don't want to work in a career that you're not passionate about for the rest of your life while you're drowning in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt after nearly a decade of fucking schooling. By opting to go down that route, you're never going to find happiness because you didn't prioritize yourself. You instead just doubled down on your own misery because you never allowed yourself the opportunity to actually explore. So, for the love of God, please start exploring. Anybody who judges you for trying to figure yourself out does not deserve your time, let alone your respect at the end of the day. So, what is there to lose? Alrighty, so with all that out of the way, this brings me to the end of the video. What I want to leave you with is this. In order to figure out who you truly are, the biggest thing you need to do is start putting yourself out there. Whether it's by picking up and trying out random ass hobbies, breaking free from the expectations of others, and living a life for yourself, or simply opening up about the feelings you have from a professional in therapy. By doing all these things, you have a much larger shot at actually reaching that point. I know eventually you'll figure it out as long as you keep pushing, so please just do that and keep on fighting the good fight. I hope you get some use out of this video, and I wish you all the best. As always, until next time, have a great day.